Today's story isn't about revenge. It's not about anger. It's about what happens when you let someone walk away and they end up walking straight into a mirror. "I hope one day you'll understand why I had to leave," she whispered. Not yelled, not even said. Whispered like it was some sacred truth too heavy for my fragile little ears. That was her parting line. No suitcase, no dramatic tears, just her phone in one hand and car keys in the other. She didn't even glance back when she walked out the door, like I was just a chapter that had gone on too long. "And you want the ridiculous part?" I said, "Okay, yeah," that was my answer. I just stood there, my socks wet from a leaking dishwasher. Dinner burning in the oven, and I let her go like I was agreeing to reschedule a dentist appointment. She said I didn't deserve her, so I let her go. What followed? Silence, then confusion, then shame, and then a high school reunion. Let me rewind, not all the way. You don't need the cliché backstory where I tell you she was out of my league. Or how I was the quiet type, or how we met on some rainy day in a bookstore. Forget that. All you need to know is 3 months after she left, she was doing great. She was glowing. She was posting filtered, soft life stories from wine tastings and hotel balconies. She had that freedom glow that people get when they're absolutely convinced they're the protagonist in their own little movie. And me, I was eating peanut butter straight out of the jar and avoiding mirrors. Then I got a message in my inbox. "Hey, you coming to the reunion?" I laughed out loud. I hadn't spoken to half those people in a decade. But then I scrolled through the RSVP list. There she was, Callie Dalton attending. I didn't think. I just typed yes. Can't wait. What was I thinking? That I'd show up looking mysterious and cool? That she'd regret everything? No. Honestly, I think I just wanted to be in the same room as her again to see if it still hurt. Spoiler, it did, but not in the way I expected. The reunion was at some overpriced event space with plastic chandeliers and a playlist stuck in 2013. I arrived early, not for dramatic effect. I just didn't want to walk in alone. People nodded at me like they vaguely remembered my name. And then as she walked in, still her, still that confident stride, still the hair tucked behind one ear like a nervous habit. But this time she wasn't glowing. She was scanning the room like someone searching for a fire exit, and then it happened. Not a greeting, not a smile, not even a hey. She froze because standing behind me was someone she never expected to see. And what came next, what I saw in her face, was not peace. It was panic. She froze, the second her eyes met his. Not Mayim, the man who stood just behind me, sipping from a paper coffee cup like he was at some casual networking mixer and not about to become the center of a storm. Her lips parted just slightly like she was going to say his name, and then didn't. I could feel her eyes trying to pull me into the gravity of her panic, but I didn't budge, not yet. I wanted to see what raw, unfiltered surprise looked like on the face of a woman who once told me I wasn't worth staying for. You're probably wondering who the man behind me was. Name's Ben. And no, he wasn't my friend. He wasn't my rebound. He wasn't even someone I planned to show up with. He was just a name in an old text thread. It's one of those forgotten ghosts from senior year. The guy who Callie dated 2 months before she met me. I hadn't seen him in over a decade, but I bumped into him in the parking lot while I was nervously debating whether to just turn around and go home. He recognized me instantly. Asked if I was coming in. I said yeah. He said, "Mind if I walk in with you?" And just like that, we did. Callie's reaction was so intense, it actually made Ben hesitate. He tilted his head, confused, and whispered, "Did I miss something?" I didn't answer. She beat me to it. "Oh wow, Ben," she said, her voice almost a squeak. "You're here." It was one of those moments where the temperature in the room drops 5, and you can't quite explain why. The conversations around us didn't exactly stop, but they slowed like people were instinctively tuning in to something that wasn't on the schedule. Ben smiled, polite, relaxed. "Of course, it's been forever. Have you been?" Her eyes flicked to me, then to him, then back to me again. I could tell she was calculating something behind those eyes, probably rewriting her own narrative in real time. I stood there, hands in my pockets, just observing. That's what I always did in our marriage. watched her take center stage while I stayed quietly in the wings. But this time, I wasn't just observing. I was waiting. Didn't know you too. Still talk, she said finally. Ben raised an eyebrow. Oh, we don't. We just ran into each other outside. Lucky timing, I guess. There it was. The moment her stomach dropped, I could actually see it in her shoulders. That realization that her past was colliding with her present, and she wasn't controlling the script anymore. And I hadn't even said a word yet. When the small talk fizzled out, she excused herself to go grab a drink. But I knew Callie. She wasn't thirsty. She was rattled. Her expression, her posture, the way she gripped the clutch in her hand too tightly, it all screamed one thing. This was not part of her plan. Ben leaned over to me and muttered, "That was weird. Did something happen between you two?" I let out a laugh that probably sounded more bitter than I intended. You could say that. I spent the next hour drifting through conversations, pretending to care about people's kids and jobs and overpriced vacations. But I was watching her, and she was watching me. At one point, I stepped outside for some air. That's when she cornered me. She stepped onto the patio like she was afraid someone would see her talking to me, as if I were the embarrassing secret in her glamorous story. Her heels clicked toward me with purpose, but her voice shook when she spoke. "What are you doing, Liam?" I blinked. "Attending a reunion like you." "What I mean? Why did you bring him?" "I didn't," I said calmly. "Fate did, or maybe just geography." She rolled her eyes, but I saw it. That flicker of something behind them. Regret? Maybe guilt, more likely. But most of all, fear. Not of me. Of what might come next. She stood there silently, arms crossed, chewing her lower lip like she used to do when she was caught in a lie, but hadn't yet figured out which version of the truth to offer. "I didn't expect to see you," she said finally. "That makes two of us," I replied. I thought she'd storm off, but instead, she sighed, stepped closer, and said the last thing I ever expected. "Liam, there's something you don't know about Ben." And that's when everything started to unravel. "There's something you don't know about Ben," she repeated, almost whispering now, her voice trembling with a tone I hadn't heard since the early years of our marriage. Not that confident, polished Callie who could silence a room with a look. No, this was the version of her that used to sit barefoot on our kitchen floor at 2 a.m. trying not to cry while drinking cereal straight from the box. Vulnerable, real, and absolutely cornered. I wanted to speak, ask what she meant, but something in her eyes warned me. She wasn't ready to tell the truth unless I dragged it out of her. And honestly, part of me didn't want to know, because that truth, it might have been the one last thread I was still holding on to. And if it snapped, I'd fall all the way down. "You left me," I said, voice quiet, bitterly soft. "Said I didn't deserve you. You didn't explain. Didn't fight. You just vanished. So, if there's something I don't know about Ben, maybe now's the time to stop pretending you're still the main character in everyone's life." Her eyes widened just slightly. I had never spoken to her like that before, and I think that's what finally shook her enough to open up. "Ben wasn't just some high school thing," she finally said, voice cracking. "It didn't end when I started seeing you. Overlapped." The word overlapped hit like a hammer to the ribs. I took a step back, slow and steady, like I'd just been handed something fragile and venomous. My head buzzed with this uncomfortable static. "Are you saying you were cheating on me back then?" She winced, and that told me everything before she spoke. "It wasn't like that," she started. "It literally was like that," I snapped. "I was young. We were just starting. You didn't even ask if we were exclusive." "Oh my God, Callie." The air between us turned colder than the October night. I stared at her, this person I had once trusted with the most ordinary sacred parts of myself, folding laundry together, holding hands in line at the DMV, arguing about the right way to load a dishwasher. And now it was like I was looking at a stranger dressed in the costume of my ex-wife. She looked down, ashamed, her fingers trembling. "Ben? He reached out to me 2 months ago, before the reunion was even announced. He told me he might go. I didn't think he would. I didn't think you'd walk in with him." There it was again. Her favorite illusion that she controlled the narrative, that everything would orbit her if she just planned well enough. But real life doesn't take orders. So you were afraid we'd talk, I said. Afraid you'd say something I wasn't supposed to know. She didn't answer, which meant yes. And that's when something shifted inside me. It's not rage, not heartbreak, just a sick, crawling realization that maybe our entire story had been based on a lie. That I had fallen in love with a highlight reel while she'd kept the deleted scenes for someone else. I turned to walk away. I didn't need more. But then she grabbed my arm. It's not hard, just enough to make me freeze. Wait, there's more. I looked at her, waiting. Swallowed hard, the words getting stuck. Ben didn't just reach out to me. Told me he was coming to make something right. That phrase, make something right. Right? How? I asked cautiously. She shook her head. I don't know, but I think he might tell you everything. I studied her for a moment, then turned back toward the building. Good, I said over my shoulder, because I'm done hearing half the truth from you. And as I stepped inside, I saw Ben standing near the bar holding a drink, smiling like nothing in the world was about to detonate. He was about to change everything. Ben didn't look like a man with a confession brewing. He looked like a man who had just reconnected with a bunch of old classmates and was soaking in the warm nostalgia of bad beer and worse lighting. He smiled, shook hands, shared jokes about former teachers from across the room. You'd never know. That he was carrying a secret big enough to demolish the foundation of a marriage that was already rubble. I walked up to him slowly, not entirely sure how to start. I don't know what I expected. Confrontation, an apology, maybe even denial. But what I didn't expect was for him to greet me first. Hey man, he said genuinely. You good? That question landed awkwardly. Was I good? My wife had just admitted she was cheating on me before we even officially became a couple. And the guy she cheated with was now standing in front of me, holding a cheap cocktail and offering pleasantries like, we were about to play a round of mini-golf. I nodded stiffly, trying not to let my emotions hijack my voice. You said you came here to make something right. Ben blinked. The smile didn't drop immediately. It sort of faded like he had to reset his face before speaking. She told you? She told me enough to make me realize I don't know anything, he sighed. Set down his drink and motioned to a quiet hallway just outside the main event space. I followed, nerves rattling like coins in a dryer. We stepped into the shadows, away from the music and laughter, and he leaned against the wall, arms crossed. It was the first time he looked truly serious. Liam, he began. I didn't come here to start drama. Honestly, I almost didn't come at all. But the thing is, I've been carrying something I should have said a long time ago. I didn't interrupt. I let the silence press on him until he filled it. When Callie and I dated back then, it was never clean. She was always 1 foot in, 1 foot out. There were other guys I knew, but I was young and stupid, and I convinced myself I didn't care. He paused, rubbed the back of his neck, then went on. The thing is, when you two started seeing each other, she told me she was done with the games, that she wanted to be better. I believed her. I even encouraged her to be with you. That part almost made me scoff. Encouraged her like this was some charity transfer. But what she didn't tell you, he continued, was that she didn't really stop. Not right away. A few months in, after you were already serious, she called me late one night. Said she missed me. Said she made a mistake. I felt the floor beneath me tilt slightly. I was weak, he admitted. I let her come over twice, maybe 3 times. I didn't think you guys would last. I figured it was just a phase. I looked at him, this man who had smiled at me earlier, like we were old pals. I wanted to punch him, to scream, to say something that would rip through the calm expression on his face. But instead, all I managed was a breathless, "You let me marry her." He didn't flinch. I didn't know you were going to. Not back then. By the time it got serious, I had moved out of state. I thought it ended. And she let me believe we had something. Real, I said. Not really to him. More like to the walls around us. Let me believe the beginning of our relationship was sacred. Ben nodded slowly. I didn't come here to make you hate her. I came because I saw your name on the guest list, and I realized that if I didn't say something, You'd never know who she really was. I wanted to argue to call him a liar, but deep down I knew he wasn't. Not because he was trustworthy, but because it fit all those weird gaps in our early relationship. Her distance, her strange guilt when I'd do something kind for her. That one time she broke down crying during a weekend trip I thought was perfect. It had all been buried under a smile. I stared past him into the shadows and felt something inside. Me snap. Not like a violent break. More like a clean, silent one. The kind that doesn't hurt until later. You came to make things right? I asked, stepping back. Congrats, you did. You gave me clarity. He didn't respond. Didn't follow me when I walked away. Back inside the reunion, Callie saw me and froze again. But this time, I didn't stop. I walked right past her, through the crowd, and straight out the front doors. Into the cool night? I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stared up at the sky, wondering how long I'd been living someone else's fantasy while quietly erasing myself. But that wasn't the end. Because the next day, someone else reached out and what? They had to say. It made everything that came before look like a warm-up. I woke up the next morning to sunlight I didn't ask for and a headache I didn't earn. I hadn't even touched alcohol at the reunion. It's not one drop. And yet my body felt like I had survived. Some disaster I couldn't remember. Grief had grown teeth and gnawed at my sleep. I rolled over, grabbed my phone off the nightstand, and saw it. One unread message from an unknown number. The first thing I noticed wasn't the words. It was the timing. 1:41 a.m., that uncanny hour of the night when people either say what they truly feel or say what they truly shouldn't. The message read, "We've never met, but I was at the reunion last night. And I think you deserve to know what she said when you left." My heart thumped in a rhythm that made me nauseous. I sat up slowly, trying to tell myself not to get pulled in again, not to chase ghosts. But curiosity is a cruel addiction, and I was already halfway down the rabbit hole before I could convince myself otherwise. I texted back cautiously, "Who is this?" The typing bubbles came and went for a full minute before they replied, "My name's Harper. I went to high school with you and Callie. You probably don't remember me. Most people didn't. I saw you leave last night. I overheard her afterward. I think you should know what she said." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. I remembered the name barely. Harper Reed. She had been one of the quiet ones, not invisible, just unnoticed. Always sketching in notebooks. Always ducking out of group photos. Don't think I ever said more than 10 words to her in high school. And now she was telling me she'd heard something about Callie that I deserved to know? God help me, I called her. It rang twice before she picked up, voice hesitant like she hadn't expected me to actually call Liam. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What did she say?" Harper exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath all night. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was leaving when I saw her talking to someone out near the valet stand. She was angry, shaken. She didn't see me, but I heard her, she said. I should have destroyed that letter when I had the chance. Everything inside me went still. "What letter?" I asked. "I don't know," Harper replied. But then she said something. About it always coming back to bite you. What? And then she said your name. I pressed the phone harder against my ear like that would somehow rewind her words, give them more clarity. "She was talking about me, yes," she said. "If Liam ever finds out what's in it, I swear to God." And then she trailed off. I didn't catch. The rest? I know this sounds insane and maybe it's not even a big deal, but something about the way she said it, the panic. It felt like something buried, something she thought was gone. I didn't speak for a few seconds. My thoughts were spinning, too fast to form sentences. "Thank you," I said. "Finally, I mean that." "Really? No problem," Harper replied, a little surprised. "And if it helps, I always thought you deserved better." The call ended. I stared at my ceiling, then at the photo frame still on my dresser, the one with the picture of Callie and me at our first apartment, grinning with takeout cartons and bad wallpaper behind us. I got up, pulled it off the dresser, and flipped it over. Nothing. Then I looked at the back panel more closely. The frame had a small compartment in the lining, something I'd never noticed. Before, my hand started shaking. I pried it open. Inside was a folded envelope, yellowed slightly at the edges. No stamp, no writing on the outside, just hidden. I opened it, and what I found inside wasn't addressed to me. It was a letter Callie had written to someone else, a letter she never sent. But it wasn't the name at the top that shattered me. It was what she admitted at the bottom. I don't remember sitting down. One second I was standing there in my bedroom holding the letter like a live wire, and the next, I was slumped on the edge of the bed staring at it like it had teeth. My name wasn't on it, not on the outside, not in the greeting. It wasn't even written like something meant for me to see. That's what made it worse. Because when people write letters they don't send, they stop filtering. They say things they think will live and die in a drawer or the trash. They're honest, brutally so. It was addressed to someone named M, not Ben, not some friend, just an initial. And the first line alone made my throat close. I've decided not to tell him. He doesn't need to know what we did that night. I reread it 3 times. My fingers curled tighter around the paper each time, but I didn't tear it. I needed to see it through. I needed to know just how deep the betrayal ran. He's safe, and he's stable, and that's what I need right now. He's the kind of man who will never ask questions I don't want to answer. But you were a spark one night, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. If things had been different, that's where I stopped. Because I knew what this was. It wasn't just infidelity. It wasn't just overlap or confusion or a mistake. This letter, this handwritten, deeply confessional, emotionally twisted letter, was a love note to someone else pinned while I was under the impression we were building a life together. But that wasn't the worst part. At the very bottom of the page, written in almost childlike scroll, like she'd panicked while writing it, was this. He's not like you. He'll never find this. He still thinks the baby wasn't possible. I dropped the letter, physically dropped it because my fingers couldn't hold it anymore. My ears started ringing, and I had to stand up. Pace, shake the numbness. Out of my hands, my chest felt tight, my mouth went dry. The baby, she had told me with tears in her eyes, that we'd never have kids. She said she'd been to the doctor, said it wasn't in the cards. I held her while she cried. I grieved with her. We made peace with the idea of a different kind of life, one without the sound of little feet. And I buried that dream like a lost future I'd never reclaim. And now this was she saying she had been pregnant, or worse, that someone else was the father. The memories started flooding back, that 1 month early in our marriage where she was constantly nauseous and blamed it on food poisoning. The week she went to visit her sister and came back strangely quiet. The moments I thought I imagined when her eyes looked tired in ways that had nothing to do with sleep. She never told me. She never gave me the choice to hurt, to support, to grieve, or to question. And now, this letter, tucked into the back of a photo frame like some relic of guilt, was the only proof it had ever existed. I picked it back up, checking for a date. There wasn't one. Just her handwriting, her unfiltered feelings, and that single initial MI sat there for what felt like an hour, just letting it sink in. The truth had become so twisted, so layered, that even the lies had their own lies. But I wasn't done. Needed answers. And for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't sorrow or self-pity. I felt resolve. I grabbed my phone and dialed the last number I ever thought I'd call again. When Callie picked up, her voice sounded confused, maybe even relieved. Liam, I didn't waste time. Who's M? Silence. Dead air. Then her voice barely audible. Where did you see that? You wrote it. You left it behind, and now I know. She stammered. I can explain. I hope you can, because if you can't, you're about to lose more than just the version of me you walked away from. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, don't do this over the phone. Meet me. I was already grabbing my keys, because the next time I saw her, I wouldn't be the same man she left. I drove to her place in a fog, not from weather. The sky was clear, too clear, but from the weight of what I'd read, what I'd heard, and what she had let rot in silence all these years. I barely remembered the turns. I don't even remember parking. I just know that one second I was gripping the steering well like it owed me answers, and the next I was standing at her front door, staring at the wreath. She'd always changed with the seasons, like everything in her life needed to look perfect from the outside. She opened the door before I knocked. Her eyes were already puffy, like she'd been crying for a while. But that didn't move me. It's not like it used to in the past. I would have crumbled, would have asked what was wrong, would have reached for her hand. But now, all I felt was cold, steady clarity. I didn't need comfort. I needed truth. "Come in," she said softly. I stepped inside. Same scented candles, same framed quotes about growth and healing and letting go. I almost laughed at one that read, "What's meant for you will never miss you." How convenient. I thought she had built her life on escape clauses disguised as mantras. She didn't waste time pretending. She sat down on the couch and gestured. For me to join her? I didn't. I stood. "Who is M?" Her eyes closed, her hands clenched together on her lap like she was holding back a scream. "It was someone I met when I went to that leadership retreat. Remember that?" I did. It was year 2 of our marriage. She came back changed, confident, distant. I chalked it up to personal growth. I even told her how proud I was that she'd found something that empowered her. She kissed me that night like she was trying to silence her own guilt. "I told you it was just for work," she said now, voice shaking. And it was mostly, but there was a speaker, a guest lecturer. He wasn't part of the company, just someone brought in to do a few sessions. I waited. We connected too fast, too deep. I didn't plan for it. I didn't mean for it to go where it went. But one night after a long dinner, she broke off. I made a mistake. "No," I said, quiet but sharp. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a decision, a choice. While I was here fixing our busted sink and trying to learn how to make your favorite lasagna from scratch." Her tears started then and again. I didn't flinch. I couldn't. I had no softness left for her to use as a landing pad. "I got pregnant," she whispered. A few weeks later, I panicked. I didn't know whose it was, and I couldn't. I couldn't bear the thought of ruining everything. "So you told me you were infertile," I said. "You staged a whole story." I went to the doctor. Did. I asked her to phrase it vaguely. She said pregnancy would be difficult, not impossible. I twisted it because it was easier than admitting what I'd done. And the baby. She looked up at me then, and her face crumbled. "I'm scared. I never told anyone, not even him. I handled it alone, and I buried it. I told myself if I could just be the perfect wife, it would go away, but it never did. It just hid in the corners of everything. Stood there, arms limp at my sides, heart trying to decide whether to shatter again or just turn to stone entirely. "All this time," I said, "you let me believe I wasn't enough, when really, I was too much. I loved you so much you couldn't look me in the eye without seeing what you'd done. I didn't deserve you," she whispered. "That's why I left." "No," I replied. "You left because it was easier than owning the truth." The room was painfully quiet. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, not just physically, but spiritually. Like the weight of her choices had finally caught up, and there was nowhere left to hide. "I wrote that letter because I needed to tell someone," she said. "But I never mailed it. I was too scared. And after a while, I convinced myself it didn't matter, but it did. God, it did." I turned toward the door. "Liam, what now?" I paused, hand on the doorknob. I didn't know. I truly didn't. I just knew I couldn't be who I was before I found the letter. I couldn't unsee the version of her that lived behind all the curated smiles and careful lies. "I'm not coming back," I said. "But I'm done carrying this for you. You can have your guilt back now." And I left. But that wasn't the end, because 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. But this one wasn't from Callie. It was from him. The envelope was unmarked. Just my name on the front, handwritten in a neat, almost architectural script. No return address, no logo. But the moment I held it, I knew who it was from. I hesitated. I actually sat with it on my kitchen table for nearly an hour before opening it. Like part of me still thought it might explode or evaporate or reveal some final betrayal that would crack me down the center. But when I opened it, it wasn't an attack. It wasn't denial. It was an apology. I won't pretend I deserve your forgiveness. I didn't know she was married. Not until it was too late. And even then, I justified it. I told myself it was just connection, just chemistry, just one night. But that night echoed, and when she told me she lost the baby, I never questioned if it was mine. I just disappeared. Cowardly, I know. Was running from something I helped break. It was more honest than anything I ever got from Callie. Not defensive, not self-pitying, just raw. He admitted his guilt, admitted how long it haunted him, and then he wrote something that stayed with me longer than anything else. The truth always finds its way, even if it has to pass through pain to get there. I hope this frees you. Hope you find something real, something clean. I folded the letter slowly, pressed my palms against it like it was a pressure point for grief. Then I set it down and stepped outside. I walked for hours that day, no destination, just breathing, noticing things I hadn't in years. The way wind moves through trees, the rhythm of a passing train, the smell of a bakery down the street I used to ignore. For the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I felt awake. Over the next few weeks, something strange happened. I didn't spiral. I didn't relapse into bitterness. I started journaling, picked up sketching again, something I hadn't done since high school. I went back to that cooking class I dropped and met people who didn't know me as the guy whose wife left. They just knew me as Liam. Awkward, quiet, but present. I even messaged Harper to thank her properly. We ended up grabbing coffee. Nothing romantic, just to people who had been sidelined by louder voices finally being heard. She told me she'd always seen more in people than they saw in themselves. I told her I was finally starting to see it too. Callie, we haven't spoken since, not out of hate, out of choice. I forgave her, not because she asked for it, but because I didn't want to carry her mistakes anymore. I didn't want to be defined by a letter I wasn't supposed to read, or a love that wasn't built on truth. Some people leave you broken, others leave you open. Sometimes the worst night of your life hands you the key to the best chapter you've yet to write. So yes, she said, I didn't deserve her. But now I see it clearly. She was right because I deserved better. Now I'm finally becoming the kind of man I would stay for. Thanks for watching this story on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever been in a situation where someone's hidden truth changed your life for better or worse, share it in the comments. We'd love to hear how your story unfolded. And don't forget to